Hello, good morning. I hope that everybody is well and that you've had a good week. This weekend, the eyes of the world are focused on Cornwall because the G7 summit is taking place in our county. I've had lots of emails and messages asking how close we are to the summit. We're on the south coast and the summit is taking place on the north coast, but Cornwall is a very narrow county. The furthest that you can be away from the sea in Cornwall is 16 miles. It's probably about a 20-25 minute drive maximum to Carbis Bay from here, but the summit is really affecting the whole of this area. In Falmouth, which is where my framers are, Falmouth has been turned into the media centre for the summit, and they've closed huge parts of it, and it's had a ripple effect. So in a funny way, the G7 summit has affected Hats, because it's been very difficult for us to get to our framers. So I was meant to go to the framers on Tuesday, but I haven't even ventured there. Just to go a short distance from my home, you hit horrendous traffic that's been generated because of the summit. Okay, so let's forget the summit and the world issues and let's focus on needlework. Before I start the video properly, I want to talk about two things. And the one thing I have been meaning to ask you your opinion for the last 2 weeks. Since we've brought out the new style booklets, which are spiral bound, we have been asked, would we consider bringing out our large booklets spiral bound? And that's something that we're very open to do, but spiral bound will impact the larger booklets in a particular way, and that is the centrefold. With our large booklets, the centre fold has a large picture of the sampler, and as a needleworker I like having a large picture to look at as I'm working. Now, you should never go by the picture, you should always go by the graph, but I still, as a needleworker, like this to be available. Now, if we spiral bind this booklet, it means that there will be holes punched along the centre, and that will mean that the centre of the centrefold will be obscured slightly. Which is your preference? Taking that into account, would you like the booklets bound as they are at the moment, or would you prefer to have them spiral bound? I'd be very, very interested to hear your opinion. Now, I'm not referring to the small booklets because they don't have centrefolds. There would be no purpose of putting a picture into a landscape booklet unless it was a long, skinny sampler, which we might do. On reflection, Harriet Goddard being a long, skinny sampler, I could have had a centrefold that way for her. I would really like your opinion. Sandra and I always say that we are needleworkers designing for other needleworkers, and anything that we can do to enhance your enjoyment of our samplers, we will gladly do, providing it's practical to do so. The other thing I want to talk about before we start talking about needlework This weekend I've been researching a young girl who stitched a sampler that Hats is hoping to reproduce. And this little girl, she died when she was 15. When I found her death in the parish records, it struck me that the month in which she died in, it was mostly babies and young children who were recorded as having died. And I look back and forward throughout the year of 1837, and the month of March, it was no different to the other months. Most of the deaths recorded were children. We are so blessed to live in the time that we do. And I just thought that it would be nice to take a moment to remember the children and the adults that died in March 1837 in a little church in the county of Warwick. The month started with John Vincent. He was 16 months old. Then we had Joseph Beck. He was 9 weeks old. Hannah Lewis, she was 20. Then we had Elizabeth Booth, who was 9 months. Sarah Fenton, who was 1 year and 7 months. Then we had William Peake. He made it to 58. Then Elizabeth Lane, who was 3. Mary Wilkes, she was 50. We then go back to children again. Mary Hedges, who was 18 months. William Phillips, 2 years and 9 months. Anne Merriman, who was 15. Anne Moore, she was 77. That was a very good age for 1837. Caroline Pitchford, who was 4 years and 3 months. Eleanor Parker, who was 1 week old. Tyson Ashton, 9 months. Those were the deaths in this little church for the month of March 1837. And you can see that if you made it past childhood, you had a good chance of a reasonably good life. But it was so difficult to, survive as a young child. And it wasn't because the parents didn't love or care for the children. It was just that there was so much poverty, so much disease, and, they couldn't treat illnesses in the same way as we can. We are so, so lucky to live in this time. Anyway, on to more positive things. This week, Hands Across the Sea Samplers had a release. The beautiful Anne Oliver. And this is a delightful sampler. I acquired this sampler a few years ago now, and I have loved looking at her. She's a sampler that I've had on display the whole time, and I've had so much pleasure from this sampler, and I'm hoping now that she's been reproduced and available that you too will have as much pleasure from her, if not more. Anne, she was 11, and this little girl, she had a really fabulous eye for colour. The colours are so, so beautiful. I loved her border. I have seen this border before, but it's not an everyday border. I love the little dachshunds or terriers in the bottom corners, and this little band I thought was delightful. She's worked entirely in cross stitch. The only over one is the verse, which is one of my favourite verses. I think this verse, it's so beautiful for a sampler. Jesus, permit thy gracious name to stand as the first efforts of an infant's hand, and whilst her fingers on the canvas move, engage her heart with thy redeeming love. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful sentiment. I love the two little birds, all these beautiful flowers, the hearts. I just think this sampler ticks so many boxes for me. Now, the sampler was stitched with Overa Soie 103 on 56 count linen. This is my favourite medium to work in, but it's also the model stitcher's favourite medium. This sampler was stitched by the Contented Stitcher, and I know that she very, very much enjoyed working on the sampler. I spent a day with the Contented Stitcher a few weeks ago, and I took her model with me, and we had great fun looking at where the Contented Stitcher was going to hang this little sampler, and I think that she's decided on the perfect spot for it. The model was stitched with 15 colours, and they're beautiful colours, they truly are. Let's get my glasses on, can't see a thing without my glasses. The stitch count is 177 stitches by 186 stitches. If you worked her on 28 count linen, she will be 12.64 by 13.29. She's not a really big sample, she is small to middling. 36 count linen, she would be 8.85 by 9.30, and on 46 count linen she would be 7.7 inches by 8.09 inches. We used Zweigart base linen that was overdyed to marble pointer by XJew Designs. This is a linen that we do like using. Duca's, she has a really nice range of colours to her linen, and because she is in Europe and we're in the UK, it makes the linen very accessible to us. It doesn't matter if you're stitching on 28 count linen or 56 count linen, you will only use one spool or one skein of Overa Soie 103 and Dalget and DNC. Now, we do like finding out a little bit of information about our girls, but unfortunately there were so many Anne Olivers in the time period that we couldn't say this is our Anne. So unfortunately we don't have any sort of personal information about Anne, but in Anne's booklet we write about the time that Anne lived in. And I do think that even if we don't know anything specific to the child, if you can take on the atmosphere and the history of the time period that the child lives in, you can get into her mindset, and this sampler, it is such a pretty little sampler. She is available as a booklet and as an instant PDF download. The booklet is our new style A5 landscape spiral bound booklets. She comes with 3 pages of historical background, and then she is charted. These charts are very kind to the eye. The thread legend appears on every 3rd page. There she is. These are turning out to be very, very popular. They're available on the Hats website or from needlework stores around the world. And with having the printed booklet and the PDF format, we hope that we are catering for your preference. We are receiving a lot of queries about are we going to bring out this sampler as a PDF, are we going to bring out this sampler as a booklet. What we're trying to do is to go back through our portfolio, and for those designs that we brought out during lockdown when printing was very difficult for us, we're going to print. And for the samplers pre-lockdown, when we didn't do PDFs, we're going to try and bring those printed booklets out as PDFs. But these things, they do take time. It's not a question of using the same file for both. For a sampler that has been brought out in one format, we literally have to sit down, we have to go to our charting program, we have to regenerate the file because it's all in different sizes, we have to redo our artwork, our annotation, we have to reformat the written story that comes with the sampler. It's probably about 3 or 4 days work, and full days work per sampler. So it's not going to happen quickly, but we are trying to go back and do this for you. Very, very pleased the amount of people that have contacted me to say that they're going to try wool for the first time. Eliza Nisbet, the sampler that we released last weekend, she was stitched with 2 colours of the green and the red, which makes her an ideal sampler to experiment with wool. And I'm really pleased how many people are going to attempt her in wool. If you don't step outside your comfort zone, you don't know what you might be missing. Why is it? Oh gosh, I'm always so afraid that they're going to drop and break when they've got glass in particular. I'll tell you a funny story. When I grew up, we never had beetroot. Now, don't ask me why, but my mother never put beetroot on the table. So I grew up never tasting it, and I only tasted beetroot for the first time probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And it's one of my favourite foods now. I had gone 50 years without being able to enjoy beetroot. Now, that might sound stupid, but it's always try something. You don't know whether you will like it or not. So please try wool. You might surprise yourself. And with wool, so many of these little girls who stitched the samplers that we love, wool was all that was available to them. So try it. What have I been working on this week? Well, last weekend I showed you Martha, and I finished her so quickly. I was really, really surprised. I shocked myself. On Sunday, I managed to settle down in the afternoon and start stitching. So I had this sort of massive marathon stitching session, and I finished her early in the week. I really caught myself unawares because I didn't have anything else to start. So I had a little rummage through some samplers, and you know how much I love red. Well, a little sampler with masses of red caught my eye. And this little sampler, it's very Christmassy. Her name is Mary, and I've got her bordering, which is made up of poinsettia. And yesterday I stitched this motif, and if I'm going to stitch any more, I need to chart some more, because this is as much as I've charted. So this afternoon I hope to get a few more motifs charted, so that this evening I can sit down and have something to stitch. I need to have something to stitch. I get so twitchy if I don't sit down and get some stitch time in. And Ray realises that if I don't get to stitch, I'm probably not the best person to be living with. So this is Mary, very Christmassy, and I look forward to next week showing you some more of her. Colour is such a fabulous thing to fill your life with. And my favourite colour is red. It always has been and it always will be. Okay, so I think that probably rounds up this week's video. I hope that the week ahead is a good one for you and that you get lots of stitching in as well. Don't forget to leave a comment about your preference about how the large booklets should be bound, whether they should remain the same with the centrefold uncompromised, or whether you would prefer to have a spiral bound version of this booklet. I'm off for lunch. Ray's taking me out for lunch today. It's such beautiful weather. It's a day to be outside and to be enjoying it. Until next week, stay safe, stay well. Bye-bye.